Do you believe that the archivist has the power to certify amendments to the Constitution when there is a dispute as to how many states have ratified the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. As I understand it, the function before the Archivist of the United States is what has been described as ministerial in function. So the Archivist publishes an amendment when it is part of the Constitution, not the decider.
Very good, and I think that's exactly right. In some ways, it would probably be similar to sort of the certification of an election. You know, when the vice president comes in, it was thought to be ministerial, not that the vice president had the power to change or alter the election. Will you allow security at the archives to force people to cover clothing that has political speech on it?
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, for that question. Absolutely not.
Will you get to the bottom of how it happened to make sure that we don't have people, I don't know if this was a rogue person out there doing this or if the previous, those in charge were encouraging this, but will you promise to get to the bottom of it?
Absolutely, Mr. Ranking Member.
I think one of the things American people hate most about government is when it appears as if justice or the adjudication of justice is partial. You know, when, you know, Lady Liberty's not blind, Lady Justice is not blind, that there are different standards for people depending on their party. And at least from where I sit, a lot of Republicans felt like there was a different standard, you know, and it'd be really in the way the FBI treated Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The bigger problem, though, I think, is that everything's classified. We classify everything. The menu at the White House is supposedly classified. So, I mean, we've got problems with too much classification, but it also makes oversight difficult. So, for example, 1 million Americans died from COVID. Somewhere between 12, 15, maybe 18 million people died worldwide from COVID. And I can't get records from the NIH. Because they classify them, or they send them to us. The NIH, I think it was HHS, sent us a 250-page document and redacted the whole thing. This is just sort of an insult, and you know, I don't know how we get to it. You don't have complete control of this, but I think you have some control over the older records. How do you understand your role on the older records with being part of declassifying older records?
Thank you for that question. Yes, as I understand it, the agency that classifies information has the responsibility for and the choice to declassify that information. But there is the National Declassification Center at the National Archives located in Maryland. And if I am confirmed, I plan to, of course, visit the National Declassification Center and also prioritize, as you said, Mr. Ranking Member, the older records that are waiting for declassification, figuring out how we can be most efficient in doing this and how we can strengthen relationships with those classifying agencies, those classifying entities, so that we are able to move some of these older documents through the process. I agree with that.
And really, just for the record here on the presidential, you know, controversy, what we're stuck with now is, you know, millions of dollars will be spent on these investigations, and there should be an investigation of neither Biden nor Trump nor Pence on this. They should be told, you know, what these are the rules, and we should try to work with people that were in office. I think we're not going to find that the secrets to making, you know, a nuclear weapon were at someone's house. I think we're going to find that a lot of stuff's classified that doesn't need to be classified. But it began with sort of a witch hunt for Trump. Everybody loved it. They, you know, the media cackled and rubbed their hands together, and it went on for weeks and weeks. They had Donald Trump. They were going to get him. They're going to put him in jail like all the rest of the governments, you know, that are controlled by one party around the country. They just had glee until Biden was found to have records in a much less secure place next to his, you know, Corvette in his garage. But I think we've overreacted to both. And I've talked with the chairman and others on the other side that we need to do something about this overclassification problem. And what little part you can be of it, and I realize and don't want you to create law, but what you can do on the older records, I think we would appreciate trying to get less. And I look forward to working with the chairman on trying to change this, because we can't have true oversight of government if HHS and NIH is telling us, you know, it's none of your business. I mean, we really have to get a hold of what's going on. And to me, the COVID thing isn't about isn't about Biden at all. A lot of this happened in the previous administration, so it shouldn't be partisan at all. We should all want to find these records. I'm going to reserve my time for later, if that's okay.
That's fine. Senator Paul, thank you. Senator Johnson, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start just by making an appeal to the chair, not only of the full committee, but also to my new chair of Permanent Subcommittee Investigations. We have Senator Marshall, Senator Paul, myself are very interested, as I think the American public is, in the origin of COVID. I think with the recent revelation now, the Department of Energy is tending toward a leak from a lab. We need to understand exactly how COVID started so we can prevent it from happening in the future. I think this committee, we have the investigatory background, certainly my subcommittee does, and I would truly encourage the chairs of the full committee and permanent subcommittee investigation to cooperate with us and, quite honestly, start a full-fledged committee investigation into the origins. I think it's extremely important, as well as, other aspects of our response to COVID, which I certainly have my viewpoint on that. The House is doing so, I think, in a pretty bipartisan fashion. There should be nothing partisan about this whatsoever. So I really encourage you as chair of the full committee and Senator Blumenthal to cooperate with us in those investigations. Ms. Shogan, in the third question that is standard in terms of asking nominees before the committee, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear testify before a duly constituted committee of Congress? If you're confirmed, you answer that in the affirmative. I'm asking, do you agree that that should be request from the minority as well?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Johnson, for that question. If I am confirmed, I will be responsive to any requests or inquiries that you have, any members on this committee have, or any members of the United States Senate or Congress within compliance of existing law. I will do that.
So there was an Office of Legal Counsel opinion in 2001 which took a look at the language of the Presidential Records Act, where it's talking about to the extent or matter within its jurisdiction to any committee or subcommittee thereof, if such records contain information as needed for the conduct of its business that is not otherwise available. There's no mention of the majority, the minority, or a chairman of a committee or chairwoman of a committee making that request. But the Office of Legal Counsel said that it's only a request from a chair. So I understand that's the legal standard put forth by the Department of Justice, a agency within the executive branch. But I would argue, and I've certainly experienced this, that it has dramatically hampered the rights of the minority to get to the bottom of what's happening in government. In your testimony, you mimic the website of the archives in terms of what the purpose of the archives is. According to the archives website, in a democracy, records belong to the people. Records help us claim our rights and entitlements, hold our elected officials accountable for their actions, and document our history as a nation. NARA ensures continuing access to the essential documentation of the rights of American citizens and the action of the government. In your testimony, you said you'll be there to safeguard government public records so that the citizens can claim their rights to hold government accountable. With that Office of Legal Counsel's opinion, if you've got the presidency held by one party and both branches of government held by the same party, half the country, through their elected representatives, have no access to records. Do you understand that?
Senator, I will need to get back to you on the OLC opinion that you're citing. I believe, as you said, that was issued during the presidency of George W. Bush. But once again, I want to promise to be as responsive as possible under the dictates of the law to yourself, to other members of this committee, and to members of the United States Senate and all members of Congress. Because I do believe, Senator, what you stated is correct. The National Archives holds the records of the United States in custody for the American people. But the American people it's their records. And I look forward to sharing them with as many Americans as possible while following the law.
So, by the way, I think current Majority Leader Schumer had an issue with that same Office of Legal Counsel opinion back in 2018. I actually agree with Senator Schumer. I think it is absurd if you believe in transparency of government, if you believe that these records are the records of the people, that in certain circumstances there is no possibility for the minority party to get access to records from the administration, so we can't hold them accountable, and the American public cannot get information that it completely deserves to have. I mean, do you agree with that position? Do you understand the quandary, the problem with that opinion?
Senator, I do understand the problem that you're outlining, and once again, I promise if I am confirmed to share as many records as possible with the American people under the dictates of the law.
So if you become archivist here, you'll also be in charge of an agency that in addition to archiving other executive branch information, you'll have potential information yourself. For example, communications between yourself and, in this case, the Department of Justice in terms of how to handle the classified information that is in the hands of President Trump, Vice President Biden, or President Biden and Vice President Pence. I'd like to, with consent, enter 2 letters, one January 23rd of this year and also February 24th, written by Senator Grassley and myself to the acting archivist, asking for information related to those investigations. We did not get a satisfactory answer in our January request, so we had to follow it up with a February request. The first one just said, if you become activist, this is a question we asked for the acting archivist, will you provide all records between the archives and the Department of Justice relating to the archives' response to our January 23rd, 2023 letter? I mean, will you provide those types of records? Or are you going to hide behind, oh, there's an active investigation, or only a chair can commit this or request this?
Senator, I have not been briefed on any details regarding these incidents due to the Department of Justice investigations. I have not.
I would just ask that you be, as you said,